Hello everybody, it's Adrian Plass here,
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
and it's number 227 in Sounding the Shadows. And we are at the end of a week of quite hard work and feeling quite tired, aren't we?
Well, we are, because actually it's quite late in the evening and we're looking out onto a rain-swept, black, dark outside. But it's a nice feeling, isn't it? Because we've been with some wonderful people this week, and very generous people, and people who've wanted to support everything, really.
Yeah, no, I think it's well, we had some low points during the week where our capacity for thinking of yet more really useful and interesting things, we had to fight a little bit there. But no, it's always like that now, and at the end of it, usually we look back and think, well, we're really glad we did that, because there seems to be something in it for the people who are here, which I'm very pleased
for us
about.
too, I think. I think it kind of there's such a lot of pain in so many people that you want them to understand much more something of how special they are to God. Because I think one of the things, and we've talked to one or two people physically, when things are difficult, it's hard to feel you're very special, really.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel too great. And I mean, you've sometimes in the morning woken up and struggled with this wretched carpal tunnel thing and various other things, and it doesn't make you feel very special. And I think a lot of people get worn out and worn down by life, really, by day-to-day ordinary living. I mean, I was watching you getting ready for us doing something, and just how difficult it is for you when, just to get out of, you were saying, weren't you, getting out of your chair in order to put a plug in.
Well, I was appalled, actually, today. All I had to do was get off a stool, go round the edge of a chair, pull a small table over, walk round the end of the piano, and then turn a plug on, and I could suddenly see why people look like they do when they get old. You can feel your whole being looking tentative and I don't know. Anyway, we still get things done. But so I think it's been a good week in many ways. But we were also occasionally talking about Jesus getting tired, which is interesting.
Yes.
And I was talking to someone today, or at the end of the week, about the story of the Samaritan woman at the well.
Oh, yeah.
And how she came to the well, and Jesus was there, and Jesus had sent the disciples off to whatever the Samaritan equivalent of Tesco's is to get food. And he'd actually walked a very long journey. I didn't realise till we went to the Holy Land.
No.
A dusty, hot, very difficult journey.
He was a lot younger
than
we are.
Yeah. But this chap said to me, well, why do you think all the disciples went to get the food? And I said, I think we can probably guess at that. That they said to him, why do you want us all to go, Lord? And he said, well, I think it would be good. You can guard each other and make sure you're all right. But I think might have been a part of him that thought, I'm going to sit by this well for a minute.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to talk about anything until the time comes to do something different. But as with a lot of the work we do, and a lot of the work that happens when you make a certain approach to life a priority, suddenly something crops up, and then you have a choice, and you either take it on or you evade it. And for him, there was the great thing about it for him was that once they'd had the conversation they had, he might have been thinking, oh my goodness, how long is this going on for? But actually, in the end, he was so excited about what had happened, and the fact that she went back to her town and told everybody about him, and they came back with the food, the disciples, and he said, I don't need your food, and It's typical Jesus. And they said, why don't you need it?
Well, they must have been a bit fed up.
Yes,
they'd
right.
gone off down a long, dusty road as well
They
to
had,
get
yeah.
the food and trudge back with it.
And then he said, I don't need your food. Doing what I'm told is my food.
I know.
Which it obviously was. And he was so excited. But the thing is, if he hadn't done that, if he hadn't made that contact as he did, he would have missed that conclusion of the conversation by the well. I also pointed out that he never got his water. I mean, he asked her for water, and it never actually happened. She was too busy talking to him and being amazed
Well,
at what he said.
he might have got his water. It's
He
just not
might.
recorded. It might not have been the most important thing to record.
I suppose so. I get the feeling she rushed off back home to start doing this new job that she'd
Yeah.
been given.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there must have been times when temptation creeps in. because
Well, we've talked
tiredness
before,
falls
haven't
over.
we, about when he went up to Tyre, and it almost says, I think it says something like he was hiding. I mean, he may not have been actually hiding, but he was certainly taking time out, wasn't he? And I mean, it's difficult when you read the account of the Syrophoenician woman. You know, he was a bit cranky,
Just
actually.
tell the story a bit, because
Well, I
some
mean,
people
I'll
won't
try and
know.
remember it, but I mean, she has a daughter who is having fits and screaming and clearly needs continual looking after, and we're told is demon possessed, and she's obviously having a dreadful time. She hears that this person has turned up who is a healer, and I think she must have just thought, blow it. I certainly she, in that expression, sort of threw caution to the wind. I mean, because she was Syrophoenician, which means that she was not a Jew, which means that she will have known that a rabbi is for the Jews. I mean, the rabbis were for the Jews. So her coming along to talk to him, and his response is not very wonderful.
Actually,
I'm amazed it's
he had
still in
already
there.
been avoiding her before
Yes,
that,
that's
hadn't he?
right.
He'd said he didn't want to have anything to do with her.
Yes, he did.
I think
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
So there she is inside there.
And he actually says, she asks for help, and he says, my bread is for, I can't remember the exact words, Adrian, but it's to do with the fact that his bread is for the children of Israel.
That's right. Yeah.
And why would he throw it to the dogs? Now, I should think she was pretty insulted. I mean, that sounds pretty insulting to me. She could have crept away. But sometimes it is necessity, it's urgency. You're going to push through. Just like the four friends who had their friend and let him down through the roof. She was not going to lose this moment. He was a healer. She knew that. And she comes up with this extraordinary reply, doesn't she? She says, well, okay, I'm a dog, more or less. But she says, well, surely even the dogs eat the crumbs under the table.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you think, if you were Jesus, you would have felt at that moment?
I have a very strong view about that, but it's only my own view, which is that I think he was very tired.
Yeah.
In fact, there's the suggestion he needed to retreat.
Oh, I think a very strong suggestion, yeah.
Bearing in mind that every day was a temptation, and every day involved crowds of people, and bearing in mind that the temptation was always there to retreat from the job he knew he had to do, that he almost certainly didn't want to see anybody, found her coming in a burden.
Yeah.
But is it feasible to suppose that this is a time when he is tempted to ignore somebody who needs him?
Well, like I say, you can get pretty cranky when you're very
Well, that's
tired.
right,
Are we allowed to think that he did really think, I just do not want to see her, and I don't have to, because that's not my job at the moment. My job is to bring the good news to the children of Israel.
And to have a rest so that I can do that.
Yes, and to have a rest so I can
I
do
think the reason that he in the end came to himself is because she gave as good as he gave.
Yes.
And that when he heard her say that, I mean, that's the sort of thing he would have said.
Yes,
he
that's
would
true.
have turned things on its head. And I think he looked at her and smiled at her and said and thought, that is very good.
Yes.
That is very good. And suddenly he comes alight, and he knows that obviously I must sort this out for her. And
But he will have always
prays for the
known,
healing.
Adrian, that the message wasn't only for the Jews, because he's God. And because that, we in the Old Testament there are references to the fact that it's going to be for the whole world. And I mean, in John, God so loved the world. I mean, I don't know, had he already known that this message was going to go throughout the world? It's an interesting
he was actually
one
on a
when you think
need-to-know
about
basis,
it.
wasn't he?
Well, I suppose that's true.
There's no
yeah.
doubt about that,
Yeah.
because he's recorded as being astonished, surprised,
That's true.
shocked,
Yep.
angered.
Yep.
So he couldn't have survived as a man if he had full knowledge
No.
of everything that was
Actually,
going to
that's
happen.
really true.
In fact,
I think he
when-
really would have hidden away.
Well, I would. When I first became a Christian, I was taught that he knew everything and could see everything. It's clearly not true. I mean, he
Yeah, that's true.
would be as vulnerable, no, not as vulnerable, but very vulnerable at times, and absolutely exhausted. And
I'm sure that's true.
when, like the woman at the well, I suppose, it would take a surprise to not to change him, but to bring him back to who he really was, which was someone who was always ready to help. I mean, the
they were
widow
both
of
quite-
Nain, his
Yeah.
heart went out to her.
Yeah, they were both quite feisty, these women. If you look at any pictures of them, I looked at a picture of the Syro-Phoenician woman who has no name, and the woman at the well who has no name. But the thing is,
She
look
was
so-
called Enid.
well, she might have been.
don't
They
know.
look so droopy. They look so dippy. And neither of them were like that. They were strong women. I mean, the Syro-Phoenician woman, determined to do something about this daughter and getting it eventually, and being the thought, we have no record of this, but the idea of her going home and finding that her daughter greets her as a normal young woman and is
Yeah.
completely free of everything that has tormented her is such a lovely idea.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, I don't know. It's very hard to understand those things. I mean, but we say he must have known this, that, and the other, which I suppose he did. But bewilderingly, he also reacted as a man and had to live as a man. And I really have no idea what that means.
No.
Obviously,
No.
but
Every now and then he does say, the seed must die in order that. He talks about the future after he's dead and what's going to happen after he's dead. So there's nothing simple.
But how do you survive? How do you survive the journey if you know that it's going to end in death? If you know it's going to end in early death, whatever else he did or didn't know, he is recorded as knowing that his death was going to be an early death.
Well,
And-
you say that, Adrian, but I mean, a lot of people live like that. I mean, I only have to think of Rob Burrows or people who have a terminal illness, and you say, how do they survive? But they do. I mean, the difference between any other human being is they are not going to take the sins of the world upon them on that cross, are they?
But
They're not-
also, as far as one can tell, I mean, obviously we're speaking from the point of view of people who sort of believe in it all. If he had wanted bread, he could have magicked it. If he had wanted
Well, yes.
to get away, he could have got away.
So he could
he had-
access the power
And
had to refuse it.
He had to refuse the power
Yeah.
to change all that, and yet this path lay before him. And I sometimes think of that, and I think of the fact that he was surrounded by these disciples who may have been a bit annoying, but they were very dear to him. And knowing that would end, we did a communion, didn't we, while we were working this week, and talked about the fact that Jesus was. He says I was very eager to be here, to be
I
with
so
you.
longed to
I
be
longed
with
to
you,
be
yeah.
here with you, knowing that this was the end, and very sadly, I'm absolutely sure, knew that they wouldn't begin to understand what he was talking about. In fact, yes, there's some very strange things going on.
But then
there.
how lovely for him, sitting there, leaning against that wall in Tyre, knowing that this woman is going home, and that when she gets home, something wonderful is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, there are moments that access. I mean, would have loved God to have given you something like that could bring about healing in people, and you know, Jesus could and did. And that must have been, I don't mean he will have taken a pleasure, a pride pleasure, but how lovely to be able to allow people to do that. And I just get the feeling, having met quite a lot of people this week who are giving out in their day-by-day lives to make somebody feel special. You know, it is an amazing gift to be able to enable somebody to feel loved, or to feel of value, or to feel they have been listened to. And that woman from Tyre had been listened to, let alone anything else, had been heard, had a chance to answer back. I bet she went home and told all her neighbours about that. I can imagine her saying, and he said, and then I said,
but it's a real cautionary tale, both of those. I mean, the woman at the well and the Syrophoenician woman, that people say, and I hear them say, I want to work for God, I want to do things, I want to see wonderful things happen. But you don't always, the path to those things, or the means by which they are going to happen, come out of setting aside considerations that sounds very commonsensical. So you say, I've got to give more time to resting. Well, we know that's true. I've got to avoid this because we know that's true. But there comes a time, I think, where, like as with Jesus, where a sacrifice that feels like a pain in the neck takes you to a place you never suspected, where things can happen in a completely different way.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have much experience of that. I mean, one small thing that happened that I really liked this week was that we read the famous poem "Love" by George Herbert, and someone we've known for some time actually said to me, I've never thought anything of poetry, and I've always thought, you know, it's got nothing there for me. And I thought it was probably seems nothing to other people, but I thought it was a fantastic thing for someone to discover the world of poetry, to be able to enter into the idea that you could find more poems and you could look at them, and when you understand them, you've got something new. I know it doesn't quite rank with the things we've been talking about. It was
I don't know.
A great pleasure to see that.
And it did remind me how many people feel that all the answers, all the triggers, all the things that will move them forward are just in the Bible, you know, and the other stuff is peripheral. But actually something like this particular poem, Love Bade Me Welcome, takes you into the heart of the gospel, means it's part of your journey. And you've often said that poetry, like music in particular, maybe like art, maybe like dance, I don't know, but they're a way in to an understanding of something, because they creep in, and you don't always get it immediately, but it just helps you to feel something other and understand maybe that aspect of Jesus and of God in a slightly different way, like looking at something beautiful. I mean, we've said it before, but you look at, there's the most amazing sunrise this morning over the sea, because where we're working is by the sea, isn't it? And there was this amazing sunrise, and our response to it is a miracle in itself, because it's so lovely.
Yeah, it's always great when you find beauty where you didn't know it existed, isn't it? Or where you didn't expect it. It's a joy, and sometimes it's with people. was someone will smile at you in a way they've never smiled at you before.
Yeah.
And you suddenly realise that you've made a link that was never seemed possible before. And those are like little miracles. I suppose that sounds a bit silly and small, but for me, it's part of the best of.
I think smiling at people when there's nothing else you can think of to do is a great thing to do. I don't mean an artificial grimace. I just mean thinking, just looking at something and it happens within you. You want to smile at them.
I wouldn't be able to smile at them anyway. I have a rather basilisk look to me. So I mean, my smiles, my smiles are sort of slight movements of my face, but they still smiles.
They
still
do,
smiles.
and your voice smiles.
Yeah,
Smiling isn't
sometimes.
just pulling your face around, is it? The smile on the face of God. You know, you've always loved that bit in Job, haven't you? That bit.
Yeah.
In fact, you really have loved that. What was it? He says this is before all the boils and the difficulties.
Well, he's remembering what a good speaker he was, and I think it's in chapter 19. If I got it right.
He's a good family man, a good man.
He was good in every way, and
Yeah.
he used to be a speaker to groups of people. He said these words apparently. When I smiled at them, they could scarcely believe it, because they have been influenced by people who represented God as being a distant, punishing, dominant, and when they saw this man smile, suddenly the sun came out.
Exactly, which is, I think, what I'm trying to say. I mean, as I say, I'm not talking about grimacing at people, but actually being smiled at is really nice.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, there we are, tiredness, smiling, wells, sitting by the well, the Syrophoenician woman. It's been a good week, actually, for us, and it's been lovely to be with the people that we've met this week.
And us always lovely to hear from you, and we'll speak to you again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.